Alrighty, y'all, it's that time again. We're going to be diving into some more custom curse techniques cooked up by you guys. So let's get into it. All right, so first up today, shout out to Golden Rosemary for sponsoring this curse technique review. Thank you so much. And Golden Rosemary's technique is called Cosmic Love. And basically, this is activated by saying the phrase Cosmic Love. And when you do that, you are going to get covered in this kind of sci-fi-esque armor. It really reminded me of like Power Rangers or Sailor Moon. So I'm interested to know if those were inspirations for this at all. But once you do that, you get the armor. It basically also comes with a couple of abilities. The first is the ability to command some drones. And there's two types of drones. We've got scouting drones, which do just that. They scout. And then there's attack drones, which can shoot out little lasers. And the caveat with the attack drones is that the more you summon, the weaker they are. So if you just have one, it's going to be the most powerful. If you have 100, then they're going to be 1/100th of that strength, if that makes sense. In addition to that, you can also summon this like sci-fi laser gun and shoot out lasers with it yourself. And then finally, there is a Shikigami portion of this ability, which basically summons another humanoid-esque creature that has access to these same abilities that you do. However, if the Shikigami is using the gun, you can't use it, etc. Rosemary also included what the maximum technique would be for this, and it's essentially like a massive spaceship that can either rain down lasers on a target or do like a very powerful condensed beam to shoot down and do massive damage. In addition to that, there is also a domain expansion, and this is probably my favorite part. The domain expansion makes your opponent have to play Galaga, basically, or Space Invaders, if you guys ever played any of those old school games. So you give your opponent the zap gun that I referred to earlier, and they basically have to fight off 10 waves of enemies that are going to come at them. And if they can successfully survive the whole thing, then they will be allowed out of the domain expansion and essentially healed from the fatigue or damage they took while in it. And finally, Rosemary also included these sketches of the character, so this was really cool. Again, I love the domain expansion, and I'm curious what the inspirations were behind this, because it definitely made me think of, again, Power Rangers and Sailor Moon. But yeah. Next up, shout out to Bills Clinton, who also sponsored this video for me to check out his curse technique called Eightfold Cursed Calcification. Now, again, we're just going to be going through the highlights here, so be sure to check this out on the Discord if you want the full information, because also there is a lot of great information on the OC character that goes with this, including a really awesome lore breakdown. So definitely check that out. But the way this curse technique works is Kohei, who is the OC, can basically manipulate and alter the calcium within their body and then extract it and use it as curse tools, of which there are 8 varieties. So these 8 varieties have their own abilities, and they are as follows. The first is called dusting, and these curse tools will basically emit a residue that can explode. The second are called married stone, and these are curse tools that can extend to have their reach, greatly improved, but the longer they become, the more brittle they become. The third are called leveled earth, and these will create a invisible barrier around the user, and inside that barrier, the user will be more agile, basically, less dense, and their curse tool will be more dense, causing it to be more impactful. The fourth are called skipping stone. And basically the way this works is the curse tool with each subsequent strike will deal more damage, up to a maximum of 7 times. The next is called Alluring Tomb, and it makes the curse tools basically have a magnetic effect or a gravity well that's going to pull things towards it. The next is called the Gate of Ishigaki, and with this one, the curse tool has a shield that will basically convert incoming cursed energy into positive cursed energy in order to heal the user. The next is called Sealing Stone, and slashes from this curse stone will basically immediately calcify, meaning if you were to cut your opponent enough, you're essentially going to be turning them into stone eventually. And then the final one is the maximum version of this curse technique, and it's called Killing Stone. What this will do is the user will turn their hand into pearl, and then if they can touch their opponent with this hand, their opponent will be immediately calcified and basically just crumble into dust. However, this technique can only be active for 88 seconds. Now, Clinton didn't include a domain expansion for this curse technique, but he did ask for suggestions. So if this got your ideas spinning at all, definitely come let us know in the Discord. But he did include a really interesting binding vow that goes hand in hand with his character. As always, pause, read the whole thing if you would like. But the gist of it is that he can only access a certain amount of his cursed energy at a time, and he is forced to cycle through those 8 different calcium variations, if you will, before moving on to the next one. And again, the final one is the maximum technique. So you kind of have to work your way toward that insta-kill move. However, once you have used the maximum technique and the 88 seconds are over, then for the rest of the day, you can cycle through whichever 8 you would like. However, you can't use the finishing move more than once a day. So I really like kind of the added depth to this character in the way they have to, finesse with their curse technique. You kind of have to go in order, so your battle strategy is going to have to depend on which tool you currently have access to, as opposed to just being able to use any all of the time. Anyways, I'm yapping, but I really liked this. All right, these next two weren't sponsored. They were just cool ones over in the Discord, so be sure to come join us over there. First up is this one from MC Charles called Save Star, and it's inspired by save points in video games, specifically in this case, Undertale. And it works exactly like you would expect. You can use cursed energy to basically create a save point, and then if you were to later get taken out, you will revert back to this save point with all of your memories intact, so you can basically operate off of the knowledge as opposed to getting fully reset with no recollection. Charles also included an extension of this technique called Load, where you can basically spend cursed energy to teleport back to your save point, and also he included a domain expansion called Hyper God's Deadly Playground. And essentially within the domain, there are no limits or restrictions on creating save points, and you can not only apply them to yourself, but to others. And you basically would apply it to other people to teleport them around and basically confuse them with the whole, retaining your memories even though the events didn't happen anymore aspect. So really cool. Also, I love Undertale and I really wish I could create save points in real life. So this was a fun idea. So this next curse technique comes to us from Turbo, and this one is very complicated, but in the best way. And I say that just to encourage you to go read this one yourself, because my synopsis may not do the best job of explaining it. But this one is called Non-euclidean, and it's based on Euclid's 5 postulates. Now, it's only 4 of the 5, though, because the 4th one wouldn't really make sense in the context of this. But essentially what this is a curse technique that is a 50-foot diameter sphere around the user. And within that sphere, they can manipulate reality, but based on very specific ways, according to these 4 postulates. So the first postulate states that given 2 points, there is a straight line that joins them. So if you're manipulating reality in this way, you're making that untrue. Meaning if I'm standing 30 feet away from you and I throw out a punch, my punch can now still hit you because the straight line postulate is no longer in effect. However, that also means you can hit me from 30 feet away as long as you understand that's what's happening. The second postulate states a straight line segment can be prolonged indefinitely. So if this is the one that's being manipulated, you can basically state how long things can travel. Obviously, it gets way more complicated than that, but an example that's given is if you shoot an arrow and you change this postulate to say lines can no longer go indefinitely, they can only go 1 foot, then the arrow is going to drop out of the air after 1 foot. This is kind of like a diet infinity in a way, if you could manipulate it correctly, but super interesting. The third postulate states a circle can be constructed when a point for its center and a distance to its radius are given. So this postulate is actually what creates the 50-foot diameter sphere around the user, of which all of this stuff happens within. So if you use the reversal of this third one, then you can actually manipulate that sphere, that barrier. So you could theoretically make it to be 100 feet or 10 feet, but obviously this is going to depend on the cursed energy that goes into it. And again, we skipped the 4th postulate, but the 5th one is where it gets really yappy. So again, read this yourself, but I'm going to give you the boiled down version. And this is what the domain expansion revolves around. And the 2 most important things are here. When moving in hyperbolic space, all lines traveling the same way will eventually diverge. However, when moving in spherical space, all lines traveling the same way will eventually converge. So this leads us to the domain expansion in the spherical geometry, where because of the fact that all lines converge on each other when in a spherical space, any attack made while in this domain will always hit the target it was intended for. This rule applies to every single person in the domain because of the fact that attacks made by people other than the user will also always land. This creates a sort of binding vow strengthening the domain. And then there's also a reversal of the domain that's included for hyperbolic geometry. And because of the fact that all lines diverge while in hyperbolic space, no attacks can land against any target while in this domain, not even by the user. This allows the user of the domain to create a non-lethal environment where fighting simply cannot happen, whether that be to rest in the middle of the fight or to have a place for discussion without the risk of danger. All in all, I really like this one. It's powerful, but it's complex. You basically need Toto level IQs in order to use this one properly. And the domains are a really cool pairing, especially the reversal, because I love the idea of like an instant peace chamber. Like, everybody chill out, let's figure this out. And y'all, that's going to do it for this one. Be sure to join the Discord, hit me with your custom curse techniques, and I will see y'all in the next one.